This is the first of the GIS tutorial lecture files, and Chapter 3 is divided up into 3 parts. We will go over an overview of GIS and talk about GIS data and layers, and then in the second part, see more information about GIS applications and examples, and then go into the software overview for ArcGIS 2. So first of all, I know we've already talked about the definition of GIS in several different ways. This really is just meant to reinforce the same themes that we've already been looking at, which is basically that geographic information systems are computerized systems designed for the storage, retrieval, and analysis of geographically referenced data. GIS is an advanced analytical support system that uses tools to explore at a scientific level the spatial relationships, patterns, and processes of cultural, biological, demographic, economic, geographic, and physical. GIS has some unique capabilities, and specifically where GIS has its strengths in the ability to store related geographic features in separate collections of files called map layers, and then to be able to access and reuse those map layers, assemble them in a number of different map compositions, and overlay them for analysis. GIS answers the following questions. First of all, the main location question, the where is it question. As we've already seen in the lecture on spatial analysis, you should be getting the idea that this location analysis, this location question, is much more robust than simply knowing where something is on the map. We can also add information and analyze information about the status of features. What's the condition of the topic we are looking at in a given map? How has it changed over time? And what are the spatial patterns we can see there? There are many different methods of spatial analysis we can use to look at spatial patterns. And then, most interestingly, I think, the ability to do spatial modeling. And that basically involves creating a simplified version of reality and running through various scenarios of data based on input analysis and modeling combinations of spatial. We can operate at many different scales, as we've already seen, from the global to local. GIS data can basically be categorized into 2 different categories in terms of different types of data, and that is vector data and raster data. Vector data is best used to summarize features that have a clear definition. In other words, they can be understood as being discrete features. They can be identified and described in simple terms as either a point, a line, or a polygon. So we use those shapes in vector data to describe those and to map them out. In the example on this slide, we see that this data has used points to identify the location of cities, and then in the attribute table, information about those cities is provided. So we see the name, the class, the population, the state, and so on. Raster data, by contrast, summarizes the world by displaying the data into raster cells. And each raster cell represents a given area on the Earth's surface. In the way that your digital camera operates with raster cells, that may be a way of thinking about raster data. So we could summarize the world and map it out using raster data when we're looking at features especially that lend themselves to being conceptualized into a grid, such as continuous data, like, for example, temperature data. When we want to do a temperature map, it's often done using raster data, and there are many more examples that we'll look at as a. The evolution of GIS can be understood and grouped into 3 different periods. First of all, the early years when the use of GIS was highly specialized and limited basically to government agencies and research institutes, to specialization in the 1980s and 1990s, which largely meant integration of desktop mapping systems within a Windows or similar environment, and then after the year 2000, increasing use of web tools, of the ability to share data and collaborate on projects. And as we'll see, there are many different. These are some of the examples of GIS software packages, and they each have different specialized uses. Some of them are made by ESRI, which is the company that produces ArcGIS. ArcGIS 10.2 is the version of the software we're using in this class, and you'll see several different pieces of software on this list from Esri. In addition, MapInfo is a business application for GIS. There are several other integrated GIS systems like GeoMedia. Intergraph, for example, is one that's still out there and is a competitor with ESRI products. And then GRASS, which is an open source GIS software tool, and ERDOS, which is used for imagery analysis. And there are three different categories of platforms for GIS systems. Those include desktop GIS, mobile GIS, and GIS web solutions. Most of your time in this class will be spent using a desktop GIS software tool, which is ArcGIS 10.2. Mobile GIS would include the use of a tablet. For example, there's a mobile application of ArcGIS 10.2 that will run on an iPhone or an iPad, and it can be used out in the field to collect data on site. And then GIS web solutions include ArcGIS Online, which you'll get some experience with later in the semester, as well as tools like Google Earth, which is actually a digital globe with some limited GIS capability. So in this initial lecture set related to Chapter 1 of the tutorial, I provided a basic overview of some GIS terminology and the structure of GIS data. In the next one, Part 2, we'll go over some GIS applications and look at examples in more detail.